everyone, welcome back to Notier's Frontiers Diaries. Today we are once again in Central America in Guatemala. We made it in the last episode down from northern Guatemala into southern Guatemala, which is full of big mountains and volcanoes.
Yeah.
We made it to the incredible city of Antigua. Antigua is the old Spanish colonial capital of Guatemala, and you can, first of all, it's named Antigua, which is old, but you can just see and feel the history all throughout it. It's got these beautiful cobblestone streets.
They're nice to walk down, but not so nice to ride the motorcycle down. Like the only footage we have, they almost look like little bricks, but like when I complain about riding down them, it's just these large plate, half-buried boulder things that that take up some of the side streets and stuff. We've been down some better off-road paths than down, the side streets of Antigua. But it was beautiful, and it's got this picturesque little arch that everybody walks to and takes a picture of.
Frames one of the volcanoes.
Yeah.
There's 3 volcanoes around Antigua. There's Volcán de Fuego, which means volcano of fire. Volcán de Agua, which is volcano of water.
Which doesn't make sense. Water volcanoes.
Maybe it's a dormant one and it just rains there or something.
Maybe there's Crater Lake or something. That would make sense.
Oh yeah, see, that would make sense.
Yeah.
And then
What's the
there's
third one?
Acatenango.
Okay, no guesses. What does that mean?
I don't know, but that's the name of it. Clearly this is an indigenous name, and this whole area is just thriving with indigenous communities as well.
Yeah.
And that volcano is, Volcán de Fuego, the volcano of fire, is constantly erupting.
Yeah.
It was erupting when we were there.
And by erupting, we meant like giving out plumes, and there was lava coming out, but not like full-on Mount St. Helens stuff.
Right.
Which is actually pretty healthy for a volcano's life, because it's not building up a lot of that pressure. It's constantly releasing it. That's what I say about my gas. it's healthy.
I don't know. In that case, I think it's better to just bottle it up.
Whatever. But, it's pretty to look at.
Yeah, it really is. Especially at night, you can kind of see that fire, that lava dripping down it. It is very, very beautiful. And then people do this. We didn't do this, but people will hike up Acatenango, and from there,
the neighboring volcano.
Yeah,
and you get a really pretty
view.
Yeah.
But we really enjoyed our time in Antigua. And
it was kind of a burn and turn this time around, and we got to experience a lot of it on foot, and it was beautiful, and I was glad that we got to do that. There was that religious parade.
Yeah.
The first night we were there walking around.
Right. We could hear kind of this music and these gongs
drums,
banging.
Yeah,
and we went out there.
Tuba.
Yeah, and they were carrying these long platforms filled with religious idols such as Jesus and Mary, and depicting certain biblical scenes.
We were just kind of going for a stroll, and we got clogged because they shut the cross traffic down.
Well, I didn't mind. I loved it.
Yeah, it was cool at first, but they, a lot of them looked like, they dressed up as like Romans with like Mohawk helmets, and then there was a bunch of like Assassin's Creed looking
I think
priests.
they were supposed to be monks.
Monks, that's what I meant. But and I'm not the most religious guy in the world, and I do appreciate arts and religion and rah-rah. But to me, for someone trying to cross the road, and these guys are taking 2 steps forward and 1 step back as part of their ceremonial strut, and I'm just like, Come
But
on.
think about how heavy that thing must have been. I mean, there were like 20 people carrying it, and yeah. I
And like
think
people
it's
around
heavy.
us are grabbing their little rosemaries and, you know, rosaries. You know, some may have rosemary, but, you know, and crying and stuff, you know, and it was pleasant to see the procession go by.
It was really nice. I really enjoy that type of stuff. I felt like we were there at a very special moment, and it was a really great opportunity to kind of glimpse into the modern day culture of Antigua.
But as soon as like paper mache Jesus, who was wearing his little thorny crown and with little blood, and you know, and the end of his career, as you would say.
Or was it the beginning?
Different perspective. But yeah, like some guy, you know, he was crying and was holding his rosary. And then he offered me drugs. He was like, "You want marijuana or ecstasy, cocaine?" I was like, "Dude,
I know.
Jesus just died for our sins." You know, whatever.
Yeah.
But
I felt like that town was very touristy.
Yeah.
It was filled with foreigners, so obviously there had been a bit of a drug trade. No one asked me to buy drugs.
no, everybody would ask me if I wanted cocaine.
Yeah,
and I don't think I
quite a few.
scream like I want to do drugs, you know?
Yeah, but yeah, it did happen quite a bit.
Yeah.
And, I don't know. It is a very touristy place, and they have a lot of Spanish schools there. We wanted to stay a bit longer, but we were intrigued to go to this other place in Guatemala that is a huge highlight called Lake Atitlán. And it is one of the most picturesque lakes on Earth.
Talk about being surrounded by volcanoes. This is just a lake surrounded by umpteen.
Yeah, it's got these 3 just gorgeous volcanoes that are the backdrop of this lake, and each one is perfectly conical. And then it also has a very cultural scene around it, because around the lake there are different villages, each with their own vibe and their own cultures and their own indigenous communities, and it's got a huge art culture. So it is a big draw for tourists and for nature lovers, and we were both of those things. So we thought, okay, we have to check this out.
We booked an Airbnb.
And this was all my idea. I'm sorry about this. I really messed up on this one.
Oh, I don't care.
I booked the Airbnb for a month. And I thought, this is going to be great. Like, it's a great deal. You get a month deal.
It was like $200 a month.
Yeah, it was super
It was like,
great.
yeah, sure, let's do that.
It was a little room in a shared house. The problem was, and we figured this out about the day before we left Antigua to go there. We realized that, so the place I'd booked was across the lake from the main city. And there was a little road that went there. So I thought, okay, we'll just take the road that goes there. Once again, my Google ideas were just totally off, because apparently this road nobody takes.
Yeah.
The way people travel around there is by these little boats that they call lanchas. And they just go across the lake and zip around, and that's how everyone takes everything around the lake. And apparently that road can be very, very dangerous. There were a lot of recommendations online to ask the local police to escort you.
And a lot of times we take, that's dangerous with like a grain of salt, because, you know, everything is potentially dangerous.
Right.
And no one likes the neighboring city type thing, you know. But this time, like, a lot of locals and a lot of people are like, yeah, man, I don't know, that's kind of sketchy. That road is a great opportunity for people to make roadblocks and just leave you naked and take everything you have.
Yes,
you know?
hijackings was a huge occurrence there. And we'd heard from Guatemalans, they would say, yeah, I think that's pretty much the most dangerous road in Guatemala.
Yeah.
So we started thinking, oh no, we've booked this place where we wanted to bring our motorcycle for a month, and we cannot get there by motorcycle. What do we do?
Yeah.
left one volcanic area and headed through the mountains to another volcanic area. And as we were riding along, it was beautiful. There were gorgeous views of the mountains all along the way. But then we saw something that was just so stunning, and I'd never ever seen anything like it before.
And like, we weren't like on an altiplano or whatever, you know, but we were high up, and then, you know, like where the lake is, it kind of, you know, the land goes down, and then there's, you know, these 3 volcanoes in the distance. And I like just immediately pulled over at one of these lookouts, and I was just like, is that where we're going? I hope to God that's where we're going, you know?
Yeah, it was like magical. I mean, those blue volcanoes in the distance with the blue lake, and they were so perfectly conical. It was gorgeous to look at. It was jaw-dropping. It was like, what sort of fantasy place have we arrived? I mean, this is the stuff out of a tropical dream.
Yeah, it was quite beautiful. And then that dream kind of turned into a little sketchy nightmare, because then, then it quite literally goes down from there. There's all these, you know, little bendy road that just continues to go down and down and down, and there's still like the sleeping policemen, which are just these, you know, concrete speed bumps across the road after X amount of miles, and I'm riding the rear brake, and we're heavily loaded, and I overheated my rear brake to the point where they didn't function anymore. I had boiled the fluid. And so I was relying heavily on my front brake, which is awful when you're preparing to go over, you know, speed bumps.
It was really steep, and the corners were quite tight, and to see oncoming traffic, which oftentimes drifts into your lane,
most
the road
of the
was
time
pretty narrow, and there's huge trucks going down this, and there's potholes everywhere. I mean, it was not the best quality road ever. And I had no idea what you know, burning out your brake fluid was.
Yeah.
I had no concept of this at the time.
But I just felt like everybody on board should be aware that we didn't have brake fluid, you know, or brakes. And so I chimed in and said, "Hey, love, how you doing?" She said, "Oh my God, this is so beautiful." And I said, "Just to let you know, we don't have rear brakes, but I haven't killed us yet, you know."
And I was like, "What?"
Yeah. Yeah, it's just every one of those speed bumps is the only time I started cursing in my helmet, because it was just, I can't slow down, I can't slow down, I can't slow down. And, you know, you don't want to dive your front tire down when you're about to go over an object, you know.
And so you have to like pump the brakes.
Yeah, like if I slapped on the brake pedal like 5-6 times, they'd finally catch. But as soon as I released it, they wouldn't catch back on until I pumped another 5-6 times. So it's just a stupid game I was playing, barreling down this, you know, Guatemalan
I was not happy, to say
yeah.
the least. But we finally made it, and I was so thankful. We pulled into Panajachel, which is the largest town around Lake Atitlán, and it was very bustling. We decided we deserved a little coffee break before finding a hotel that night.
Well, and I also wanted to find a mechanic because I didn't want to get rear brakes as soon as possible. Rear brakes are nice when you only have 2 brakes. It's nice to have 100% brake.
But we were at the cafe when we started realizing that this was going to be a problem. Me having booked this place for a month and us not knowing at the time, but later learning that the road there was not a good idea.
Well, it was nice because when we were having coffee and I'm freaking out about the brakes and I'm freaking out because now we can't get to where we're staying for a month.
Yeah.
You know, and if it takes us 2 days to figure it out, and God bless, whatever, then we'll be there for 28 days instead of 30. So I wasn't like, oh my God, we're going to lose our reservation, you know.
Right.
But we had to figure it out. But there was a guy on another adventure bike that was there and came up and introduced it and was like, oh my gosh, rah, rah. And we chitted and chatted and you know, like, we told him of our dilemma, and he said, oh, yeah, that road I wouldn't necessarily go down. But, you know, we had a good conversation with him, and it was good to hear from someone local at that place who was definitely like, if you're going to go down that road, get a police escort because it's max sketch. But so then we sat down, and we were pondering about what we were going to do. You know.
And I said, hey, do you remember there was someone who once contacted you and said, hey, if you guys need anything, we live in Panajachel, Guatemala. And for some reason, that name just stuck in my head. There's a lot of long names in Guatemala, but I remembered Panajachel. Yeah. And I said, there was someone that contacted you like a year ago. I was like,
when? And she was like a year ago, before we even left. And I was like, I have a folder, or I have a saved little file of like worldly contacts with like, you know, people who have reached out to us. And sure enough, I found, you know, on Facebook Messenger, I found the whole, hey, if you're ever in Pana, ring us up. And so
that was Greg and
Jess. I shot him a text. I replied back to the text from like a year ago, you know, and I was like, hey, you know, is that offer still valid, you know? You know, within 5 minutes, she replied back like, yeah, when are you going to be in Pana? You know, and I was like, surprise, we're here, you know? And she's like, oh my God, that is totally unexpected. We aren't available tonight, but tomorrow we'll be around. And so we booked a little hotel, and
we had a lovely dinner right on that lake. The sun was setting. It's just from Panajachel, there's the view of the 3 volcanoes. As you go to the other towns around Lake Atitlán, they kind of butt up against the volcanoes, so you don't get that perfect view of all 3 of them like you do in Panajachel. And I will never forget that. It was a beautiful sunset.
Little piers that go into the lake, and you know, silhouettes of people fishing against the sundown, and it was real pretty.
I was still quite concerned though. I was worried that we were not going to be able to figure out this whole motorcycle road situation. We were going to have to take a police escort, but luckily the next day we woke up, we met with Greg and Jess, and they turned out to be wonderful friends of ours. Yeah.
Jess is Canadian, Greg is from the States.
And they've done stuff all over the world.
They've traveled through Africa.
She rides a motorcycle. She's now about to embark on a journey all around the world with their dog Moxie, who we met at the time. It's beautiful.
And it's all for charity. We'll throw a link down there.
To Girls Up, empowering women all over the world. So, you know, they're just great people, and they worked for different things, nonprofit organizations that helped out local communities, and we were able to get a glimpse of that as well. But
they said, you know, her mother was going to stay with them for a little bit, and so we couldn't stay there. And I said, that is fine. we booked somewhere for like a month, and so we don't need to stay somewhere, but we do need a babysitter for my motorcycle, you know. And they have, you know, a fenced-in property. They're like, oh yeah, of course.
And they had 2 Beamers, and so they were just really, really accommodating and welcoming, and the perfect contacts to have there in this strange country to us and a whole new place, and we were quite concerned. We'd done something that wasn't the smartest thing ever.
And he knew of a mechanic to get my brakes fixed. And so before we took off across the it's only a 20-minute boat ride. I rode my KTM to the mechanic, and he rode his Beamer behind. We dropped it off. He said, "Yeah, I can do it in a couple days. You can come pick it back up." And then on the way back, I had to hop on his Beamer, and that was the first time I had ever been a pillion in my entire life, and it was awful. And like, to be a pillion for the first time in traffic such as Guatemala.
I know.
But no, first time versus like a buildup of this is normal hell, but like submerged into fiery lava pits of it was crazy. We're dodging and weaving again, and like I feel like I'm 108 feet tall, and I'm just this counterweight that's just trying to slam us to the ground. And we're going down dirt roads. It's just
You hopped off.
I got off. I said, "Excuse me, sir. Excuse me, Greg. I would like to exit." I said, "What?" I said, "I am going to walk. I would like to enjoy the view." And he said, "What?" And so I walked home. And then I see like Marisa peeking out the gate 15 minutes later, like, "What the hell?"
Justin and I were like, "Where are they? What is taking so long?" We see Greg come by himself. We're like, "Oh no, something terrible has happened." But it was just him not being a very good pillion.
Yeah, I respect you very much for doing that, because that's terrifying.
So we packed up our stuff from the motorcycle, put it all in a little lancha, and headed across Lake Atitlán. Finally, we made it to San Pedro. And that will be in our next episode as we stay in San Pedro de la Laguna for a month out there. We have tons of amazing rides with Greg and Jess. We take some of that crazy, scary road, but some of it. Not all of it, and also explore all different parts of that region of Guatemala. So stay tuned. I hope to be seeing you next time, and I hope you liked this video. If you did, please give us a thumbs up and hit the subscribe button below. Ding, ding. And we will be seeing you next time.
Peace, everybody.
Bye.
Stay safe.